Okay, so let's get a temperature check. How's everybody feel? Who's excited? Who's scared? Who's having some wins? Who's having some struggles? Let's hear some stuff. Any volunteers? Nobody's struggling? Well, that's good, but you will at some point, right? Stephanie, you look like you want to say something. Hold on, I can't hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's a big deal for me to tell my boss this week that I'm going to give up one of my days because I am feeling very behind in what I'm doing here. And I definitely just know that all these other things that come at me, mom stuff and work stuff and life stuff, I keep putting my studies behind, and I like have that growing thing in me that's saying, don't do it, I want it. So it was big for me this week to do that. Plus a few things that I'm starting to identify in my chair, and definitely realizing that my doctor doesn't know how to talk about what I'm trying to talk about. And he's a very good doctor and I respect him a lot, but I'm just starting to feel that like, gosh, I need to go a step further with this, but I don't know how.
And it's hard. And we have a whole lesson. So let me back up. Were you having trouble getting into class?
I was trying to do it in my car and I kept hitting dead patches, and then I tried again. And
okay, so I just wanted to make sure, because I remember telling you like, no, keep coming back, and you kept coming back. And I thought, okay, is she having trouble? Okay. What was I going to say? Now I can't remember. Oh, we have a lesson coming up. So I don't think you were there for that part when I said we've got some lessons coming up that are really going to be interactive, where I'm going to say, hey, unmute, have your face on, let's have conversations. And one of them is conversations with confidence, or conversations that convert. And that is just practicing different. It's kind of like I'm in the hot seat where you guys, well, you're in the hot seat and I'm in the hot seat, because I'm saying, so you get this question, what are you going to say? What's your answer going to be? So that you guys can not look like ding dongs, so you can know how to take that next step. Ultimately, I think your gut and your bravery will be like, okay, I know how to take this a step farther. It is so hard when you have a boss that just doesn't understand it. And sometimes just simply having a conversation where you give them an out to delegate it to you. I don't know, talk to Stephanie, she's the expert. That's helpful. I have had lots of doctors. So I had the luxury of doing temp and running a temp company before I left hygiene. But I was working in a full-time job right before I left. So I've done both. And I had a lot of not bosses, because they were just temp positions where I was filling in, and they would say, how do I address this? And I would say, don't scare them away and don't give them misinformation. Don't tell, get them, you don't explain open heart surgery. You have them talk to their cardiologist for that. And so sometimes giving your boss the out of, hey, where are you struggling? I mean, does it seem like he's open to that? Is he just not genuine, understand it? Or is he giving you a little bit of like head on,
he's not giving me, I will admit a little bit I feel like I'm waiting till I'm a little more confident to have more confident conversations with him. Me just beginning to point little things out that I've never pointed out before. I mean, I've been working with him for 5 years, and he's a really smart guy, but obviously he knows a lot about dentistry, but he obviously doesn't know what I know now. Like and I don't expect him to, unless he wants to go take some courses and just want to talk more about tethered oral tissues and tongue ties and breathing problems. So I feel like the conversation will come soon when I can completely explain what I'm doing, and then ask him to join me a little bit. And he's somebody like I can do that with. Yeah. He knows what I'm doing. I think he doesn't know exactly what I'm doing.
And that's typically it, that they just don't know. So when I have done coaching with students before, we all know what 7-layer dip is. And it's like, so I give it this new version of like, so, Okay, so what? So practice, talk to yourself in your car. You know, you're talking about confident conversations. So and that's what I was talking about, those upcoming lessons. There's like quizzes where I just say, hey, Tina, how would you explain this? Or how would you explain this? Because that's putting you guys on the spot, going to make your pit sweat, but you're going to learn and you're never going to forget that conversation, because those are the ones I remember most, are the ones that I made a total arse of myself, where I'm like, oh, God, I fumble, but I'm going to take it for the touchdown. So, practice talking to yourself in your car. Okay, so why is a tongue tie bad? Well, so what? So then what? So there was your sour cream. Now we're going to get to the lettuce and the black olives and the dip and the meat, you know, all of that stuff. And I specifically do that because I thought she was a total jerk client. And I met her in the dental chair, and you'll also meet her in one of the bonus modules, Kimberly. She would just be like, yeah, so, but what does that mean? So why? So what does that matter? And I just was like, so that, until you run out of words or flow chart, like, okay, this goes to here and this, until you run out of connections, keep talking, keep practicing that, because that's where your confidence is going to come in. Why does a tongue tie matter? I don't have any symptoms. Why does that matter? Well, you may not know it now, but you also might have a lot that you just think are normal. So why does that matter? Well, given your age, your face is done screwed up because it's done growing, but the rest of your, you know, how you breathe or how you sleep, that's helpful, because when you can follow your conversation, that's when you're going to feel a little more confident. Does that make sense?
I feel like I want to do a 7-layer dip for every single thing you've done, or every topic you've done so far. So
yeah. So 7-layer dip it, baby. Just dig in. Why does this matter? What can I come up to talk about this? Again, I've talked a little bit about this concept when it comes to exams. What if Dr. Zoggy called me and said, hey, Carmen, why do you think that Stephanie has a tongue tie? I would say, because I can see it, you know, but well, symptom like this, and why does that matter? Go through the symptoms, that kind of stuff. The other thing, so this is totally jumping ship back to the giving up a day. That's a huge step. Scary step. It's a huge step because you're on your way out of hygiene.
Yeah.
And we haven't yet gotten there. But also those lessons, total calendar control is coming up. And in the morning, I teach it. In the afternoon, we have a study hall where I want everybody to be at their computers, have a Google Calendar ready to go. We're going to lay out our calendar, and we're going to really talk about a lot of things, but we'll talk about focused time, and I call it tiger time. So you now have a day, and I am just cautioning you and encouraging you to pay attention what happens to that day, because you will mom it away. Yeah. Trust me. And that's what I did. When I left, I was like, laundry was done. The house was clean. There was a crock pot full of food, and I wasn't getting anything done. So this goes back to, okay, now you've got some white space. What are you going to do with it? Because you used to work a job on that day. So theoretically, you should have 8 hours to do work. And it suddenly becomes that you're cleaning, and you're going to have the best, cleanest toilets in Idaho, but you're not going to be forward in your business. So you'll get caught up. And I feel like people feel behind at all times. I feel like I'm behind because I'm at whatever point in my business instead of this, you know, so it's that comparison game. But you made a step, and that was it.
Feeling good.
That was a huge step. So congratulations on that. And remember this day, because you're going to someday go, oh, I started taking my course at this point, and then I gave up a day of hygiene. You're 12. Today is lesson number 11. So we're 12 weeks in.
Yeah.
And you've given a day of hygiene up. So that's huge, but you'll get there. The confidence will come, but the confidence comes from practicing, not getting ready to get ready to get ready. And it's okay to start a conversation and then go, snap. I don't know. I only got to the beans. I'll get to the meat next time, because you will, or I'll say something, or your classmates will say something, and you'll say that, just like Dr. Zoggy. And it's like wearing a size small when you need a size large. I learned it and I've used it thousands of times since. So that's awesome. Who else has something to say?
I do.
Go for it.
So I feel like a kind of a crazy person. I feel like literally everyone has a tongue tie. Like, I mean, I have now had it confirmed by Dr. Bieneman that my kid does. I do. Pretty sure my husband does. I know my little one does. Like, I almost think his is worse than the 4-year-old. Like half my hygiene patients, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Am I making this up? It feels like every
7-layer dip. How do I justify this? So I felt the same way. And I have had moments in my business, and you guys will too, where you just sit down and you're like, am I saying this to get somebody to do therapy with me? That was my biggest thing is am I saying this? Because really it was hard, because after my training, I just felt like if somebody didn't have a tongue tie, there was no reason that they were going to want to work with me. So there was this period of time where I just felt like, oh, yeah, maybe, and then it gets to the point where I'm pretending that Dr. Bieneman's calling me up. I want to back up. How did that make you feel? Because I got your email when you went to, and you guys are either going to go through this or have. How did that make you feel as a mom? Because you going through this, Stephanie, you going through this as the person with a tongue tie, you're going to be able to empathize. See, I can't do that with anybody. I can only live anecdotally through, the stories of thousands of people with tongue ties. But how did that make you feel when you went and met him and he told you that you guys have the gift that keeps on giving?
I mean, I was pretty confident that he had one. And then like I have an Eiffel Tower, but he just kind of sort of like glanced at mine and he was like, yeah, but it's not like crazy. But he was like, because you're doing what you're doing, you're probably gonna want full function. He was like, you're one of those adults that I would say, okay, yes, you have a tie, but like, what are your goals here? Do you have a lot of symptoms? No, so it's sort of your choice. But he was like, in his case, like it's affecting his growth and his airway, like sleep issues are the reason that which I've had concerns about his sleep for quite a while, that the pediatrician is like, he'll get some growth, his tonsils will be fine, it's whatever. And so then one of the very first lessons when you talked about like a spitty baby, I was like, okay, that he probably has a tongue tie. And then I like was looking and I'm like, am I just trying to see it? Does he have one? And then when like Dr. Bieneman sat him up, I was like, little bit. And he was like, more than a little bit. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was like a relief that I feel like there's solutions,
There's an
because I felt,
yeah.
But he also was like, this is literally the worst possible age to do a tongue tie release. And so he doesn't want to do it right now.
Yeah. So you learned and so do you learn a lot going to his office?
Yes. And like I feel like he sort of breezed through some things because he could like see that I knew what he was saying, but I could tell that when like he spent a lot of time even with us, his education process is very good. Like if I didn't know what the hell he was, if it was like new to me, he was very like good at educating.
Yeah. And that's what I encourage you guys all do is find your Dr. Bieneman, find somebody who will take you under their wing. Tina, Dr. Roca, I can't imagine that she is not going to be helpful. Because that made all of the difference. Also, Kelsey, all of my students who are in Colorado go to Dr. B, and he just has to be like, Carmen's sending another one of her students, but he also knows that I like having him on this pedestal of you did so much for me.
Yeah.
But you just knowing it, seeing it from both sides, your personal story, your kiddo, what you felt as a mom when people were telling you your kid was fine. Those are the emotions. And I don't mean play on the emotions in a negative way, but that's going to help you with your target audience, your ideal human. You might be more drawn to help moms like you who suspect that there's a problem, because so many kiddos are told that they're fine. Meanwhile, they suffer through school, they get put on pills, ADHD is at crisis levels, all of that stuff. And you're going to have a story. It's like, No.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to your comment about you feel like tongue ties are everywhere. It's very noticeable. You're in people's mouths, you're looking. I loved it because it became a game for me. I would look in their chart like, oh, they gag, they don't like x-rays, da, da, da.
Yeah.
It just became a game of what I could learn about this person, their story, their narrative that I wrote before they were even in the chair, which is why Kim, when I talk about 7-layer tip, because she just, she drilled me and drilled me and drilled me and drilled me. And I just kept putting on another layer, putting on another layer. And I had no idea until she emailed me and said, I listened to everything you said. And I came home and I did my own research. That's who I am as a human. I want you to tell me, and I'm going to listen, and I'm making every mental note, and I'll get in my car and I will Google it, or I'll put a reminder in my phone, you know, to look something up. So that's exactly how I would have been. I don't know why it caught me off guard. It just felt like she was just drilling me, but it was the best practice I ever had, because I just, so that in the business world, we talk about like, so here's the pain point and the benefit. You want to do this so that, so that, and you just keep digging. So practice in your car. I do it all the time. And I have trainers that train me. So anybody else? Go for it, Tina.
Oh, so I've made some promising progress on my website and all of those things. So I'm excited about that. And then my husband's been doing a great job at putting me on the spot with influential people that I don't know, and it's very intimidating. So I'm hopeful.
Like on the spot, like, hey, this is what my wife does. And
yeah, we're just at the White House and he's like talking to advisors. Oh yeah, this is my wife. She's studying this. You should tell him about what you do. And I'm like,
Right, baptism by fire, baby.
Yes.
Baptism by fire, because it's so funny. Scott doesn't put me on the spot. It's kind of the other way. Like we'll be at a wedding and he'll look across and there I am, got a cocktail in one hand, and I'm like showing somebody, and he's like, oh geez, she's doing it again. She's looking in their mouth. But that's the best way. And that's why, again, in Conversations for Confidence, I want to rapid fire. Like, what are you going to say if somebody says, do you take insurance? What are you going to say if somebody says this? What are you going to say? I think that's the thing that just makes you stand out, because people have paid me handsomely to help them talk about this. And I don't do it anymore. Because I tell people they have to take my program to understand me and my process before I can just sit. Because Tina, it would be like me and you sitting down and you trying to understand my personality, how I answer something. So I don't let people do it anymore, which frustrates them. But nothing turns me off faster than if I'm trying to talk to somebody about said product and they don't know. Drives me crazy. Or if I go to Best Buy and I'm trying to buy a piece of technology and Joe Blow doesn't know anything beyond the lead pencil in his hand, I'm like, oh, can you give me somebody who knows what I'm talking about? So is it addicting to be working on your website?
Oh, I have to like step away sometimes. It's just like, I'll look up and then 6 hours have gone by. I'm like, how did it take this long to just do this?
I love it. I love it. I always I joke that every time Scott went to the bathroom, I was hoping it was for a long visit so that I could work and work and work and work. I had an interesting, we'll talk about this, I'm sure at some point with websites, but I had an interesting moment recently. My website was hacked. So I'm not sure who it might've been another student that I coached on. So I never realized I didn't have security on my website. So 6 years in, and suddenly my website was in Chinese selling Prada purses. So you guys make sure you have security and make sure your website's backed up. I also crashed my website earlier this year, and I got my management team and I said, what do I do? And they're like, well, where's your backup? I said, it's right here. And so it was backing up some component of it, but not the entire website. So I had to get crisis management people and Carmen Cat to rebuild a website in a couple days. So you guys may not know that my website crashed, but I know it crashed. And so I've learned a couple lessons, but I had some of my Instagram followers say, when I click on your website, it shows Asian. Well, so when I would click on it, it showed fine, but cookies. And then also where it was showing up is in a Google search, which is really not where I want it to come up. And so finally I realized, I went to log in one day and I realized I can't log in to my website. This is a problem. So it cost me a lot of money to fix it. So make sure that you have security and a backup. Those are the scabs. We get through it, but it is the cost of doing business. But if I can save you money, but I love the website. So, okay. Anything else? Chelsea, are you chomping at the bit to talk about our conversation?
Yeah, whatever.
I think it'll be a great conversation. So Chelsea emailed me last week, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyhow, she emailed me recently about somebody that she wanted to help. And I replied to her, this is not an appropriate client for you to help. Bring this question to therapy and we're going to talk about it, or to therapy. Bring this question to coaching. We're going to talk about it. Her and I have since done coaching, so we've talked through all of it. The reason that it's a great learning opportunity for you guys. So she had no idea, but it was just like, well, this conversation should not have gotten that far because right out of the gate, I want you to know how to handle it. So take it away, Chelsea, and tell us a little bit about the situation.
Okay, so one of my high school friends, well, I made my Facebook page for my business a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, that was scary because then I was like, nah, I can't back down from this. But so anyways, she messaged me on there and told me she's got like a 1.5-year-old little girl. And she told me that her dietitian had recommended her little girl to see a myofunctional therapist. And then she ended up seeing my first post for my Facebook page. And she's like, perfect. Like, I know you. That's exactly what my daughter needs. And so she basically asked me, like, what does it entail? What does it cost? Like, it was just asking me questions about it. So I was like, crap, I don't know any of that yet because I don't have prices. And then I was like, I know there's like a certain age that you can't do anything for. And I have a 1.5-year-old and she loves brushing her teeth, but I can't brush her teeth and I definitely can't look at her tongue yet. So I was like, so then I asked Carmen, like, is this a situation where I would do like limited therapy and basically teach the parents who then have to do the therapy at home, or like, what do I do? So yeah, we coached on it. And well, the email, I mean, Carmen's like, no, not appropriate. And I was like, good, because I didn't know what to do. So I let her know that. She still hasn't responded to me, which is fine.
Yeah,
But
that's okay.
yeah.
So first things first, the Facebook page, make it real, baby. So one of my biggest mentors and one of my business trainers, Amy Porterfield, taught me storm the island and burn the boats. And so if you have plan B, you are not serious about plan A. And so there's been plenty of times in my career where I'm like, oh my God. So that says so much. So when you say, hey, I did my Facebook and I put it out there, I can't back down. Yeah, that's what we want. So you just burned a boat. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this, you guys, is because that was my response to her, and of course I didn't know this. I didn't know the part about the Facebook page and stuff. She was just saying, hey, there's this 1-year-old. We talked about the first step is a free assessment. And I was like, no, we shouldn't have gotten to that conversation because just of the age. So that's the biggest thing is for this to be not a speech issue or a feeding therapist issue, a child has to have volitional control of the muscles and be able to cooperate, comprehend, and comply with therapy. Those are my words, okay? The volitional control is in the universe. I don't know where I learned that. So that's just also why we can't work with stroke victims. I have been asked to work with somebody who has been shot in the face but did not have volitional control of those muscles. So, and it's going to be hard because you guys are going to get into a catch-22 and just like Chelsea, like, oh, hey, yeah, I want to help. I want to get going. I want to do something. We all have a server's heart and we want to help. So in this situation, the way that you help, if you choose to help, is to help educate the parents. So in this case, I would be saying clearly myofunctional therapy is not what your kiddo needs. The dietitian was wrong or confused, but it would be a feeding specialist. So that is a specialty of I think speech. Well, I know speech, but maybe occupational therapy does something with that also. Sometimes an IBCLC, an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, can be helpful, but I don't know about 1.5 if it's not a nursing issue. An IBCLC is not a lactation consultant. It's a little bit different of a level and background. Okay, so like a lactation consultant is more of a auxiliary support versus, it's kind of like a dental assistant versus a dental hygienist. So that would have been the first thing, is because we never want to prevent out the human from not getting what they need. And that's what happens when we work with somebody who we shouldn't, or we don't refer them for a sleep study, or we don't refer them for sleep apnea concerns because we want to hold them and work. Well, it's negligent on our part, but we also don't want to shortchange them. We want them to get what they need. So we want to come right out of the gate swinging, saying, hey, I'm not the person. Here's what you need. Now you can choose to educate those parents the best that you can. When I used to do free assessments, I would let anybody of any age make an appointment. So I did a lot of free time educating parents in the hopes that I was making a difference, and in the hopes that when kiddo was old enough, they would come back to me. And the reality eventually set in that I can't keep doing those free visits, or I chose not to keep doing those free visits to educate people who could not become my customer, because like my time, I only have so much time. And so that's when I changed it to 4 years old. So then I would have people that would, they would make an appointment, and now it's just an exam. So at least I'm getting paid for my time. But when I was still doing a free assessment, they would make the appointment for Johnny, their son who's 5, and their daughter Lily who's 3, and and I just wouldn't talk about it. I would just say, so we have this visit and we're talking about Johnny today. Also going back to the free assessment. So originally when I started doing free assessments, I did 1 per person. Over time-wise, I had to start doing 1 per family. I did not need to repeat what I was repeating to 1 appointment for 7 children, because I have a lot of big families. And so when I started having spent 3 hours of my time for free talking about the same thing, and they never made an exam. So that was kind of the progression of the free assessment, 1 for every kiddo, then 1 per family. So I would just say, like, if somebody made the appointment and they've got, mom, dad, a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, I would say, the younger ones, they're too young for therapy. So we'll skip right over them and then let's go to the others. But you guys can use it as an opportunity to educate, to challenge yourself. But at some point, you just need to know where that line is. And it's so hard because parents are going to be the ones that pull on your heartstring the most. Kelsey, you probably haven't been desperate to the point, but you would not believe the emails and stuff that I get. They are this long. They've got 14 pictures of their 6-month-old. And it's so hard, but I have to empathize with them, but also tell them, I am sorry, I don't work with children, so I can't offer any advice to you. So if you're lucky enough to know somebody, or in your network, find somebody who can help in those situations, then you can refer to them. But sometimes it's choosing just to educate. Sometimes it's really hard to just stay out of it, keep your hand out of the cookie jar. And I think that's the hardest thing. So that's why I wanted Chelsea to bring this to coaching, because you guys are that's gonna happen. Or you're gonna have somebody that's borderline where you're like, well, what can I do? Now, our business side, okay, so that's the myofunctional therapy side. Then you get your business side and your creative mind, like I have, of, so is there a situation where I can help, and how do I do that? So we talked about my Mommy, Myo, and Me program, which I created as a bridge program. So it is meant to bridge from being too young to being old enough to do therapy. And it's really game based. And I can't remember, it's like $197 or something. It is not wildly popular, I will say that. So it was probably not worth the time spent to make it. However, when Chelsea said, can I teach the parents how to do it? That's where it gets tricky, because myofunctional therapy, you know, the volitional control, but who can't? I can collect payment for teaching anybody anything every day. So you'll see me teaching a lot of things as an educational program. I'm not doing therapy. I'm not doing therapy with you. I've got legal protection in all of my stuff with, hey, this isn't therapy. This isn't meant to replace therapy. I'm not a doctor, blah, blah, blah. But something like that, you know, you'd be saying, okay, so what can I do with a 1-year-old? I don't know. Go ahead. Go ahead. I can't hear you.
Just to that point, like if it were a tongue tie situation though, you could educate parent and say, oftentimes they run in families. So do you think that you could? And then they might end up being a client, right? Does that happen?
Yep. That's your business brain always saying, Mom. And you'll meet parents that say, oh, well, I know I have a concern. And you're like, well, I can't work with Johnny, but maybe we need to start fixing you. And then when Johnny comes along, I'm going to give him a 10% off discount because I've already gotten results for you. So yes, absolutely. But back to the Mommy, Myo, and Me, that whole program is not meant to, it's a digital program. So I don't work with these people. It's like they're buying how to sell real estate on the internet, you know, like they're buying something and they're doing the work. Now, I have had feedback from a lot of parents who have done it, and they, like the youngest was 2, and the kiddo just couldn't grasp it, but like 2.5, the kiddo could. So everybody's going to be different. And that's where I wouldn't say, hey, you want to start here, but I do want you guys at some point to be like, what does my business brain say? How can I help these people? How can I support them? It got to the point where I would talk to parents and I would say, hey, your kiddo's too young. The best I can offer is I do have a program that is meant to help you get going with them. So it's game based. Can you get a 1.5-year-old to click? You know, those type of things. So that's something that you can be thinking about down the road. And we might get to, I haven't completely decided the lessons that we're going to do in stage 5, because that's just the end. It's just business stuff, how you grow your business. But those are tricky things, because like in this situation, I just wouldn't want Chelsea to say, hey, yeah, I have this program that can offer you, and it keeps them from getting the care that they need from their kiddo. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah.
So you're always looking at things just with a side eye, like, is this right? Is this wrong? But definitely, then the tongue tie and the age comes into it. Kelsey, what did Dr. B tell you? So he said it's the worst age. Now, wait, did he say till age 4?
So
Or
he
5?
said, okay, so he, like my biggest concern was sleep. Then I suspected a tongue tie. So, and I know his tonsils are bigger. So he was like, you know, if he like, we're not eating, or we're having major speech concerns. He was like, or a parent just absolutely insists. He was like, I will do a release on a 4-year-old under anesthesia, but he was like, I hate doing releases on kids under anesthesia. He's like, I do it once a month. It's back to back to back. And he's like, but I hate it. And he's like, and also I know that I'm going to have to do another one in a few years. So he was like, in this case, you know, he was like, I would try to get him paying attention to the mouth breathing, get in more nasal breathing, maybe try some mouth tape. And I'm like, oh, my 4-year-old. Okay. And then he said, oh, that one's better. Okay. And I haven't gotten that far yet. I've just started going into his room a lot in the evenings and like looking, and sometimes his mouth is closed and sometimes it's open. But anyway, so trying to just get him to pay attention more a little bit. And then he recommended doing their like ring sleep study. I'm just waiting on them to have a small ring so we can do that. And then depending on what that says, if it seems like he is having like major sleep, like breathing concerns, then go to ENT, which I may just do ENT anyway. So possible like tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy, which obviously I would like to avoid doing a major surgery if possible, but I don't want him to go another year or two with bad sleep, because we're starting to see some like ADHD tendencies. So
yeah. And Jess and I are working on several cases. I should say Jess is, because they're working with her. Several kiddos whose parents don't want them to have their tonsils out. We know the reality of it, that they probably will, but we wanted the parents to feel like, hey, I'm on your side. I'm willing to do whatever. I have started a lot more mouth taping early on with kiddos. And the thing about using a mouth tape, and I just, like, I send a couple of these in their kit. I have the parents Google it, like mouth tape for kids, and get what you want. Patrick McEwen has I think it's called myotape. It's just really expensive. But it's meant to go around the lips, and it just puts some pressure to gently help them want to close. So like I did therapy with a kiddo on Wednesday, and I said, Mom, he can't overdo mouth taping. Like you can do it that. And then I have him do the Coloplast paste out of his kit on the spot. And I said, you can't overdo that. So that's going to be helpful.
Would you just recommend going to ENT, just doing that? Okay.
Yeah. Did I give you the name of the guy? I did, right?
You gave me a couple that somebody recommended to you. Should I ask Dr. Bieneman his?
Yeah, you can ask him too. That one that I gave you from Kimmy is one that she has found, because some ENTs, they're really reluctant to like, we'll just leave them, but we can't establish nasal breathing. And so sometimes you just want an ENT that's willing to pull anything.
Yeah. And
So
he told me, he was like, I've got 5
ENTs.
ENTs. Yeah. He was like, I've got 5 ENTs. I could give you their numbers on my phone right now, and they would just do it, like, because I'm sending you over there. So
yeah. And sometimes you also want somebody who does that with tongue ties. We always want them to be well prepared for a tongue tie and all. Not at any age, but I get a lot of adults who want to be optimum. And that's what Dr. Bieneman was saying to you. You might be unlike other people, where I send a lot of people who say, Carmen, I'm not happy with 80% range of motion. Doctors think I'm okay, but I want to be better than 80%. And I have a lot of symptoms. So Tina, did you have something to say? You looked like you were.
Yeah, I was indeed thought. I do have a question. Do you get many people that like are referred to you from like TMJ doctors at all? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I was wanting to know, because I have a previous doctor that I worked with who's now relocated, but knows I'm doing myo. And I just wanted to know, when they do all of their stuff that they do, especially like the neuromuscular dentists and things like that, is it more advisable for them to do myo prior to diving into like the orthotics and all kinds of crazy stuff that they do? Or how do we support each other with that relationship? Because I know we'll probably eventually be working together. So I don't know what comes first.
There's not an ideal answer. In an ideal world, I would want somebody to work with me and fix their crap before paying for an appliance. The other thing is, it's so hard. So I would say jaw is just, it's one of those areas where, like I was saying, I have very huge names that send to me, and it's like, wait, they can't do, A, B, and C. So we should have caught this. What you will find you end up doing is that you tiptoe around the situation. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's like, oh, you've got that orthotic. Okay, perfect. You do you. You do what you have to do. It's the same when somebody comes to me with their myo brace. It's the same when somebody comes to me with a myo munchie. I'm like, beautiful, keep following your instructions. Let's rock and roll. I'm going this way, because I tell people I don't work with an appliance. I work to help you correct the behavior around it. So you're going to have a lot of people that have these appliances. A Mago device was a new one that I had several years ago. And now I'm getting a lot of people with this Mago device that's supposed to help and do the job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, close my mouth. What do I stay focused on? Tongue posture, mouth posture, nasal breathing, swallow. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you have to choose, you have to determine if the toes you're going to step on are connected to the butt you have to kiss. And that is, I mean, it's the same in dentistry. I mean, we all see fillings that people have done and we're like, oh my, are you kidding me?
I mean, I guess my thing is like, if they do therapy with us and then their jaw pain's gone, then they're not going to see that TMJ doc necessarily. So you know what I mean? And so they're not going to refer to me if they're not going to benefit from that situation. So I guess that's what I was going with that.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it just also depends on those relationships. So the other thing you have to think about is big picture. If I have a global practice, so I have I don't have a heavy referral source from one jaw doctor. Typically how people end up in my rabbit hole is because they're failing in that area. So they start looking. So the end of the desperation highway. It is a little bit different if you're building a relationship in, like Stephanie's building one in her town, with those providers. Then that's a conversation of, how do you want to do this? What's your protocol? Here's my protocol. And I'm careful about bending for everybody else's protocol. I had a doctor, a very well-known orthodontist in Pennsylvania, tell my client that the kiddo, it's a waste of money to start myofunctional therapy before he has his expansion. And I had to send her a nastygram, professionally and nice, but saying, you're doing expansion on this kiddo, and friend, we got to get the tongue up and we got to get the mouth closed and the lips sealed, or else it's completely pointless. And I was blown away that she worded it that way. But I also let her know, hey, I'm like, we're not wasting time here. I'm going to work with Max. We're going to get to X amount of point. I'm going to pause him and have him tread water, and we're going to save time on the clock. So I wanted her to know my protocol. Hey, I'm not using a year of therapy for that, but like, come on, you're a big name in ortho, you know this. Why would you say that? So it's hard, but I don't bend my rules, but sometimes I want to, or I don't change my protocol per se, but what do they want? And if it's somebody that you have a very mutual, a great relationship with, I have a great relationship with Dr. Bieneman. Sometimes we pass the buck to each other, and I have to be the bad guy or he has to be the bad guy, but we each have our own processes. Does that help?
Yes, definitely.
But still try and build that relationship, because also they're going to have people who have trouble and aren't getting better with their jaw. And they're going to say, well, I don't know, maybe you can do some myofunctional therapy. And you're going to say, well, I don't know, maybe you could have lifted the damn tongue up and looked. I say a lot of stuff on my inside voice, you guys, and probably on my outside voice too, but not to them. Okay. We are all set. Does anybody else have anything to say? No, we're good. Have a beautiful weekend. I don't know what we're talking about next time. I guess I should just double check. I'm pretty sure that we do have class. So, adult case studies. So I have nothing. We're going to just open cases. And what do you see? What would you say? Here's what I did, that kind of stuff. So adult case studies next time. So I will see you guys then. Have a beautiful weekend. Bye-bye.